Fox News decided to attack a study which showed how marijuana is safer than most drugs. Let's watch.
Pot may be safer for you than you think, according to a brand new study. It suggests that marijuana may be the least dangerous recreational drug out there, even over nicotine and alcohol.
Well, this may be good news for Alaska and D.C. residents, where pot just became legal this week. But is it really that safe? Joining us now is Fox News Medical 18's Dr. David Samadi. Thanks for being with us.
Sure, good morning.
You say the study actually can be misleading a little bit.
I think it's a very dangerous study, and there are a lot of holes in this, and people have to be very careful about not getting the wrong message from this particular study. They're using a lethal dose as a comparison. For example, they're putting pot or weed against cocaine or alcohol and smoking. So we know that you need less amount of alcohol to die. So they're using death as a measure to see what's dangerous and what's not. So the effect of this toxicity, the toxicology dose, is different for a lot of these. They're extrapolating a lot of these animal studies and surveys that doesn't make much of a sense and coming with this whole thing that pot is safer. Absolutely not. It's a huge fraud in this particular study.
Okay, so how is it dangerous? Forgetting death,
because they're not defining what's the acute toxicity, short-term versus long-term. So, for example, if you really start drinking a lot of alcohol, of course, you can die from this, or cocaine or other things. With this, the long-term effect of pot is not very clear. Now, a lot of this has to do with what we call THC. The level of THC in a lot of these marijuanas are different. Used to be 1%, now it's 4%, it's going up to 7%. THC goes through your blood as you smoke it, gets to your brain, and it causes a lot of memory loss. It causes cognitive skills, mood changes, twofold risk of psychosis, long term. Now, what I learned about this, preparing for this segment, is it affects your heart. It actually causes heart attack, 5-fold times increases your heart rate, and on and on. We're seeing in Colorado, we had 13 kids that came to the emergency, ended up in the ICU as a result of overdose from marijuana. Now we have crack babies coming in because pregnant women are smoking this whole marijuana business.
That's embarrassing. You heard him at the end? We have crack babies coming in, and it's caused from this whole marijuana business. I'm pretty sure that crack babies are created when people smoke crack, not marijuana. What are you talking about? Okay, that's the least trustworthy doctor I've ever seen in my life. They called him part of the medical A-team. Only if A stands for asshole. He started talking about pot overdoses? No. That's not possible. Do you understand? That's not possible. This is stuff that we know. There's something called the LD50 rate, which is a lethal dose for 50% of the population if they do it. That amount is like the equivalent of having 20,000 or 40,000 joints by yourself in like a 15-minute time span. In other words, absolutely impossible. Impossible. It's not possible. It's just not possible. And he's like, short term, some of these other things may be worse, but long term, man, there's a lot of problems with marijuana. And what? Long term with the other stuff there isn't? Have you heard of cirrhosis of the liver? Have you heard of lung cancer or emphysema from tobacco? Have you heard of, look, if you really want to have this conversation and go down the road of the way the drugs affect you long term, you'd have to look at all the different drugs, and you'd have to be as straightforward and factual as you can be, and there would be a laundry list of things for probably all the different drugs. And if you really want to compare apples to apples, you'd find that the marijuana probably has less, comparatively speaking. And by the way, as we say time and time again when we talk about drugs, 80 to 90% of users are moderate users. That's not according to me, that's according to Dr. Carl Hart, who studies these things. His job is this, and he says 80 to 90% of people. So recreational, they don't have addiction, even, every once in a while a social joint or a social drink or whatever, and it's fine. But they want to fearmonger and do this reefer madness nonsense where they take a study which says that weed isn't as bad as the other drugs, and they say, no, it's the exact opposite. It's worse than the other drugs. But the study says the exact opposite. What do you mean? Well, I just declare that the opposite is true. But you're not even providing any real evidence. You just cited pot overdoses as evidence, and that doesn't happen. You just made that up. Oh, heart attacks, causes heart attacks. Okay, he extrapolated from that based on the fact that marijuana raises your heart rate. Okay, so it raises your heart rate, but show me concrete, clear examples of this person had a heart attack because of weed. And by the way, if you can show me those examples, here's one thing that's for sure, certainly few and far between. Whereas I'm sure we could show you a trillion of those examples from other substances that are perfectly legal. If you have too much caffeine and you have a heart attack because your heart's going too fast, does that mean we should ban caffeine? Red Bull, Monster Energy, all this stuff? No, they grandfather in that stuff. It's already legal, so therefore we'll just not have a serious intellectual discussion about it. But the one that's illegal, we'll continue to pile onto that one and make it seem like it's worse, even though it's not. And then my favorite part was at the beginning when he's like, quote, they're using a lethal dose as a comparison. And he makes it seem like that's like bad for some reason, that's fucked up for some reason, but he doesn't explain why. You know what my response to that is? That they're using a lethal dose as a comparison? That's right. And that's exactly what you should do. We covered this study the other day on the show. What they're saying is when you have your normal amount of alcohol, you go out to, recreationally drink with your friends and you have your normal amount of alcohol. Let's say for argument's sake, you have 2 beers and 3 shots. You're actually closer to death doing that than you are if you have your standard dose of heroin. That was one of the main findings of the study, and, it blows all of our minds, including mine, because we have this thing in our heads where we think the drugs that are illegal are all, factually speaking, worse for you than the drugs that are legal. But that's not true. It turns out that's not true. And according to that specific measurement, how close you are to death at one given time from the substance, alcohol is the worst of all of them. So he brings that up and then swats it down based on nothing. He's like, they do it based on how lethal one dose is, comparatively speaking. And that dismiss that. Okay, but why do we dismiss that? I just want to dismiss it. But that's not a reason to dismiss it. That's an incredibly relevant fact, and it's very important, and it's very good that we know that now. He's like, don't pay attention to that. Why? Because of marijuana overdoses, which don't exist, and the fact that crack babies come from smoking weed, which I also just made up.